My name is Melanie Irwin. 6 months ago, I walked away from a career that had defined me for 20 years. My sister called it career suicide. My former colleagues whispered about burnout. But when your mother is told she has only 3 months left to live, job titles suddenly lose all meaning. What I didn't expect was that my own sister would use my sacrifice to humiliate me, in front of 200 guests at my son's wedding, including his CEO. What she didn't realize was that her boss and mine were the same person. And that man had been trying to recruit me back for months. So when she grabbed that microphone and called me a jobless loser, trying to impress the most powerful man in the room, she had no idea she was talking to someone who already knew exactly who I was, and what I was worth. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're tuning in from. Because what happened next didn't just shift my career, it changed everything I believed about family, success, and the cost of silence. Let me take you back to where it all began. 6 months before Jake's wedding, I was sitting in the corner office I'd earned after 5 relentless years, staring at my resignation letter. Outside, Manhattan stretched endlessly, a skyline built on 60-hour weeks and countless missed dinners. My assistant knocked, another crisis with the Samsung campaign. Normally, I'd dive in without hesitation. But that morning, I'd received the call that shattered everything. Stage 4, the oncologist had said. We're looking at months, not years. I turned in my resignation that afternoon. 20 years spent building a name as one of the top marketing directors in the tech world, managing budgets that could buy small companies. $50 million annually. My campaigns had delivered over 300% ROI for 5 straight years. Those numbers had opened doors, earned me respect, and brought job offers from every major firm in New York. But none of it mattered when my mother sometimes couldn't remember my name. Sandra's reaction was immediate and predictable. My younger sister had always measured herself against me, keeping score in a game I never wanted to play. When she learned I'd quit, she didn't bother to hide her smugness. So, you're just done? She asked that first week at Mom's house. All those years of climbing the ladder, and you're throwing it away to play nurse? I was changing Mom's 4 bag, something I'd learned from YouTube tutorials and the kind nurse who trained me. It's called taking care of family, I said. Sandra scoffed. It's called giving up. She adjusted her new Hermes bag, a gift to herself for her latest promotion as HR director at some tech firm. Not everyone can handle corporate pressure forever, I guess. The comment stung, but I let it go. Sandra dropped by once a week, usually during her lunch hour, just long enough to snap a selfie with Mom for her Instagram stories. Family first, she'd caption it, before rushing off to her important meetings. Then the whispers began. Old colleagues texted to check in, their concern thinly veiled as curiosity. LinkedIn contacts wondered why I'd gone quiet. Invitations to industry events stopped arriving, as if career failure was contagious. But every night, when Mom squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for being here," I knew I'd made the right choice, even if the world chose to forget me. As Jake's wedding drew closer, Sandra's campaign to diminish me escalated. Every family gathering became another stage for her to highlight my new lifestyle while boasting about her own. Melanie's taking a little break from the real world, she'd tell our cousins at Easter dinner, patting my shoulder like I was fragile. Some people just aren't built for the long haul. Meanwhile, I was just promoted to senior HR director. Did I mention the CEO personally picked me? She mentioned it all right, on Facebook, LinkedIn, probably skywritten above Manhattan. Her posts were always lined with digs, success is a choice. Some people choose careers, others choose other things. Hashtag girlboss, hashtag never settle, hashtag corporate life. Even our relatives began treating me differently. Uncle Robert, who once sought my business advice, now turned to Sandra. Aunt Patricia kept slipping job listings toward me at Sunday dinners. Just in case you're ready to get back out there, she'd whisper, like unemployment was a scandal. A week before the wedding, I was sitting by Mom's bedside when Jake stopped in after work. My son had my mind for strategy and his father's heart, a rare mix. Mom, he began carefully, helping me fix her pillows. Sandra's been talking about you at the office. Your office? I asked, keeping my tone calm. Jake worked as a software engineer at TechVision Corp., the same company where Sandra had landed her HR role. She doesn't realize we work in the same building, he said. Different departments. But, she's been telling people you had a breakdown. That you couldn't handle the pressure. I focused on the medication schedule. Let her talk. It's not right, Jake protested. You gave up everything for Grandma. That takes strength, not weakness. Then his face brightened. Speaking of work, my new boss, David Chen, he's coming to the wedding. He asked about you when I mentioned your background. Said he might have heard of you. I smiled at his effort to cheer me up. If only I'd known how much David Chen actually knew. The morning of the wedding, I stood in my childhood bedroom, holding the pearl necklace Mom had worn at her own wedding. She was lucid that day, alert, smiling, even managing solid food. You look beautiful, sweetheart, she said from her wheelchair. Don't let Sandra get to you today. She's just insecure, always has been. I know, Mom, I said, fastening the pearls. But inside, I was already thinking about the cost of staying silent. 20 years of credibility, gone. The respective industry peers, potential clients, and 3 CEOs Jake had proudly invited, ready to vanish under Sandra's poisonous narrative. Melanie Irwin, burned out, unstable, couldn't hack it. And worse, it could hurt Jake's career. He was new at TechVision, trying to prove himself. He didn't need Sandra's gossip trailing his name through the same halls. My phone buzzed with LinkedIn notifications. One caught my eye, activity from an old account I thought I'd deactivated. Someone had been reviewing my profile, downloading my portfolio, revisiting my career history. Melanie, Mom called softly, pulling me back. Remember, quiet strength. Not every answer needs to be loud. I kissed her forehead, promising to film the whole day. She was too weak to attend, but she made me promise to stand tall and smile. The venue was a restored mansion on Long Island, chosen by Emily's family. As I drove there, I considered my options. I could confront Sandra privately, she'd deny everything. I could ignore her, she'd take that as victory. Or I could wait, for the perfect moment. I didn't realize that moment would find me, with 200 witnesses and a live microphone. Cocktail hour was in full swing when I spotted him. David Chen. Standing near the bar, same focused eyes I remembered from our video calls years ago. Back then, he was a VP at a struggling startup I'd turned around in 6 months, right before TechVision bought them for $200 million. He caught my gaze and smiled, not politely, but knowingly. That's when Sandra appeared, clutching my arm. Come on, there are people you should meet. Jake's coworkers are dying to meet his family. She dragged me toward a circle of young professionals, all scanning the crowd like career hunters. Everyone, this is Jake's mother, Sandra beamed. Melanie used to work in marketing, but she's taking a little break now. Oh? What company? Asked a woman with a TechVision badge. Before I could speak, Sandra jumped in. She's between opportunities. You know how it is, some people just need a breather when things get too intense. I stayed calm. But I noticed David Chen had moved within earshot, pretending to admire a photo display. Then my phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message, check your email. DC. My heart skipped. I opened the email. It was an offer letter from last week, TechVision's offer. Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy. $300,000 base salary plus bonuses. I declined, explaining my situation. David had replied, the offer stands whenever you're ready, Melanie. Jennifer asked what you're doing these days, Sandra chirped, snapping me back. I'm in transition, I said evenly, focusing on what matters most. Sandra laughed. That's a nice way of saying unemployed. She had no clue her CEO was standing just 10 feet behind her. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have had your back, you'll understand what came next. Because that wedding reception? It was about to turn into a masterclass in poetic justice. Sandra kept talking, louder now, performing for the growing circle. "This is my sister," she told another guest. "She used to be successful, once upon a time. But some people just peak early." Jake appeared at the edge of the crowd, anger flashing in his eyes. Emily whispered something to calm him. "What kind of marketing?" asked an older man, a Fortune 500 exec I recognized. "Oh, the usual," Sandra said before I could answer. She managed a few campaigns, nothing major. Now she's exploring options. That's code for unemployed, right? I opened my mouth, but she cut me off again. The important thing is, she's here for family now, even if it meant giving up everything. Some people just aren't built for long-term success. But hey, someone has to be the cautionary tale. The group shifted awkwardly. A few left. Others leaned closer, sensing drama. One guest even lifted a phone, recording. Perfect. David Chen stepped fully into view now, right behind Sandra. She still hadn't noticed. "I've been promoted 3 times in 2 years, Sandra continued proudly. "Just last month, our CEO personally chose me for a special project." She smiled smugly. David Chen himself said I represent the future of TechVision's leadership. I almost laughed. Because standing behind her, David Chen just raised an eyebrow. When Melanie resigned for personal reasons, I knew she'd never work again, Sandra said with a smug laugh. Who's going to hire someone who walks away from a 20-year career? It's career suicide. Sandra, Jake's voice cut in sharply, warning clear. What? I'm just being honest, she said, lifting her champagne glass like she was giving a speech. Your mom knows I love her, but facts are facts. She's unemployable now. That's when I noticed David Chen take out his phone, typing something quickly. A moment later, Sandra's phone buzzed. She ignored it, too absorbed in her self-appointed role as truth-teller. The universe was aligning perfectly. You know what's really sad? Sandra went on, her voice taking on a faux philosophical tone, like she was hosting a TED Talk on failure. She threw away a $50 million budget for what? To play nurse? Anyone could do that. But only Melanie could do what she did in marketing. What a waste. By now, at least 30 people had gathered, including several of Jake's colleagues from TechVision. They looked uncomfortable but fascinated, like rubberneckers passing an accident. That's enough, Aunt Sandra, Jake said, stepping forward, his tone steady but firm. Oh, honey, she replied sweetly, the venom just beneath her words. I'm just trying to help your mom face reality. Denial isn't healthy. Then she turned to me, eyes gleaming with triumph. Tell them, Mel. Tell them how you haven't updated your LinkedIn in 6 months. How you ignore recruiters' calls. How you've completely given up. My phone buzzed again. A message from DC, want me to handle this, or would you prefer to? I typed back quickly, let her finish digging. The truth is, Sandra continued dramatically, sweeping a hand toward me, my sister is a cautionary tale. A perfect example of women who can't handle work-life balance. She cracked under pressure, plain and simple. And now, at her own son's wedding, she's just another unemployed, middle-aged woman trying to stay relevant. That's when David Chen started walking toward us. Sandra, still oblivious, kept going. Unlike some people, she said loudly, I've never let family obligations interfere with my career. That's why David Chen, our CEO, personally mentors me. He says I remind him of himself, focused, driven, not distracted by, taking care of dying parents. Is that so? David's voice cut through the air, calm, precise, lethal. Sandra froze. Her face went through a whole slideshow of emotions, surprise, delight, confusion, then dread. Mr. Chen. Wow, I didn't realize you were here. Perfect timing. I was just telling everyone about you. This is my sister, the one I mentioned, the unemployed one. David smiled thinly. Yes. I heard your introduction. Very thorough. Sandra beamed, still missing the danger in his tone. I know you value honesty and transparency. I thought everyone should know the real situation, not some sugar-coated version. Oh, I absolutely value honesty, David said smoothly, pulling his phone back out. In fact, I think this is the perfect time for a little transparency. The crowd quieted. Even the band seemed to sense the shift, their instruments falling silent. Jake's hand found mine, squeezing once. David stood tall, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone used to commanding boardrooms. Before we continue, he began evenly, I should mention that I've been trying to reach Melanie for several weeks. Sandra's confident smile faltered. Reach her? Why would you? Last month, David said clearly, I offered her the position of Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy at TechVision. $300,000 base salary, plus bonuses. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. She turned me down, he added simply. Sandra's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. That's impossible, she stammered. She's unemployed. She quit her job. She's been out of work for 6 months, she left her position to care for her terminally ill mother, David interrupted, his tone sharp enough to slice through marble. There's a difference between giving up and choosing what matters most. He turned slightly, addressing the gathered crowd. 5 years ago, Melanie Irwin saved my former company from bankruptcy. She rebuilt a shattered marketing department and led it to deliver 300% ROI for 5 consecutive years. Sandra's face had drained of color. But she's not working now, David continued, because she's declined multiple offers, including mine. Just last week, she turned down roles from 3 Fortune 500 companies. He held up his phone. I have the emails right here, Goldman Sachs, Microsoft, and yes, TechVision, all declined because she's prioritizing her mother's end-of-life care. The silence was absolute. Phones were raised, recording every word. But that's not even the most interesting part, David said, fixing his gaze on Sandra. Do you know why I'm here tonight, Ms. Morrison? Sandra shook her head weakly. Jake Irwin is one of our most promising engineers. When he mentioned his mother's background, I recognized the name immediately. Melanie Irwin is a legend in our industry. Her campaigns are still studied in business schools. Gasps echoed. Even the TechVision employees looked stunned. So imagine my surprise, David continued, when my own HR director, someone who reports directly to me, publicly called her sister unemployable and a failure. Sandra's hands trembled. Mr. Chen, I was just violating our company's code of conduct regarding professional behavior and respect, he finished for her, tone flat and final. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. There must be some misunderstanding, Sandra sputtered. I didn't know about any offers. Melanie never told me, why would she? David said icily. You've spent 6 months tearing her down. You've posted on social media about choosing career over family. You used her sacrifice as a stepping stone to promote yourself. He scrolled on his phone. Let's see. Facebook post, last Tuesday, some people choose success, others choose excuses. Grateful to work for a CEO who values ambition over emotion. Hashtag TechVision proud. Hashtag career first. Several people gasped. Jake's coworkers exchanged glances, they'd seen it. That wasn't about Melanie specifically. Sandra tried weakly. Really? David arched a brow. Because your cousin asked if you were talking about your sister, and you replied with a laughing emoji. My phone buzzed again. A message from Jennifer Liu, the young woman who'd asked about my work earlier. Your sister's been badmouthing you at the office for months. We all noticed. David's been looking into it. It clicked. This wasn't spontaneous. David had been building this moment deliberately. "Here's what's going to happen," David said, his voice calm but absolute. "Ms. Morrison, you're going to step away from this wedding reception and think carefully about how your behavior reflects on TechVision's values. You can't threaten me at a family event." Sandra's voice cracked. "I'm not threatening you," David said evenly. "I'm clarifying expectations for professional conduct. As HR director, you know our employee handbook clearly states that behavior reflecting poorly on the company, even off the clock, is grounds for disciplinary review." The wedding coordinator approached, clearly tense. "Is everything all right here?" "Just a bit of family business," David said smoothly. "Actually, could you bring a microphone? I'd like to make a toast to the bride and groom." Sandra looked like she might collapse. Moments later, the coordinator returned with a wireless mic. David accepted it, turning to the crowd with a calm smile. "Good evening, everyone," he began. "I'm David Chen, CEO of TechVision Corporation, and I'm honored to celebrate Jake and Emily tonight." Polite applause rippled through the hall. "But I'd also like to take a moment," he continued, "to speak about values, family, and what true success really means." He turned toward me. 6 months ago, Melanie Irwin left one of the most successful marketing careers in the industry. Not because she failed, but because her mother needed her. You could hear a pin drop. "For those unaware," he said, "Melanie managed $50 million annual budgets and drove 300% ROI for 5 straight years. She created the campaign that helped sell my previous company for $200 million. Gasps echoed. Jake's colleagues were staring at me in shock and admiration. "Last week," David continued, "I offered her $300,000 to join TechVision. She declined, not because she's unemployable, as her sister so kindly claimed, but because she chose family over ambition." Sandra made a strangled sound. "Please, Mr. Chen," he lifted a hand. "Ms. Morrison, you've spent this evening calling your sister an unemployed loser, a failure, and a cautionary tale. You did this publicly, while representing TechVision, invoking my name and misrepresenting your relationship with me." Whispers spread through the room like wildfire. Cameras flashed. Every word was being documented. "Let me be clear," David said, his tone now firm. "Melanie Irwin is not unemployed. She's not a failure. She's a woman who chose love over money, and family over status. That makes her worth more than any job title could measure." He paused, then added, "However, Sandra Morrison, you've demonstrated values completely opposite of what TechVision stands for. Publicly humiliating your own sister, especially one caring for a dying parent, shows a lack of empathy incompatible with HR leadership." Sandra's knees buckled. She gripped a chair for balance. "You can't do this, not here, not now, you chose the venue," David replied coldly. "I'm simply providing context." He turned back to the crowd. "Melanie Irwin represents what real leadership looks like: integrity, compassion, and courage when no one's watching." "Mr. Chen, please," Sandra begged, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean, you meant every word," he said firmly. "You've created a toxic culture that discourages empathy and punishes care. That ends now." He pulled up an email on his phone. "This is your termination letter, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear your desk Monday morning." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Sandra's face crumpled, tears spilling, not from remorse but humiliation. "This is illegal. You can't fire me over personal comments." "I'm firing you," David said calmly, "for violating company ethics, creating a hostile environment, and misrepresenting your position. Doing it publicly at a family wedding is just spectacularly poor judgment." Jake stepped forward, his tone even. "Aunt Sandra, I think it's best if you leave." "You set this up," she screamed, pointing at me. "You knew he'd be here." I finally spoke, my voice calm, steady, and professional. "I didn't plan anything, Sandra. I didn't have to. You wrote this ending yourself, one cruel word at a time. David handed the microphone back to the coordinator. Now, he said, smiling at Jake and Emily, let's return to celebrating the people who actually deserve it. Before walking away, he turned back once more. Melanie, that offer still stands. Though I have a feeling you already have something better in mind. He was right. I did. As Sandra stood there trembling, David added quietly, before you go, Ms. Morrison, please hand your company phone and laptop to Jake. He'll make sure they're returned. Sandra's hand shook as she pulled out her Tech Vision-issued iPhone and passed it to Jake. 2 suited security guards appeared near the door, discreet but unmistakable. 20 years, she whispered to me, broken. 20 years living in your shadow. Even when you quit, even when you had nothing, people still talked about you, the great Melanie Irwin. That, I said softly, was your burden to heal, Sandra. Not mine to carry. David cleared his throat, his voice effortlessly commanding the room once again. Now, he began, allow me to properly introduce someone. Melanie Irwin isn't just a name in marketing, she's the reason my company survived when everyone else had written us off. She transformed a failing startup into an acquisition worth $200 million. The crowd murmured in surprise. Then, a Fortune 500 executive stepped forward, eyes wide. Melanie Irwin? From the Samsung partnership? My God, I've been trying to recruit you for years. And just like that, the energy shifted. People surged toward me, not Sandra, who was being quietly escorted away by security, but me. Business cards appeared from every direction. We need someone to head global marketing. We're expanding into Asia, name your price. Double whatever she offered. Triple, someone else shouted over the noise. Jake was grinning from ear to ear, Emily's hand clutched to his, tears of pride glistening in her eyes. Even though it was their wedding, they looked genuinely thrilled to share this moment of redemption. David raised a hand, and the room quieted. As I mentioned, he said with a wry smile, I've already offered Ms. Irwin a position, $300,000 base, plus bonuses, full benefits, and unlimited family leave to care for her mother. I'll double it, someone shouted. Triple, came another voice. David turned to me knowingly. Though something tells me, he said, you have bigger plans than working for any of us. He was right. I pulled out my phone, opening an email draft I'd written earlier that morning. Actually, Mr. Chen, I said, I've been thinking. After 2 decades of building everyone else's dreams, maybe it's time I build my own. The crowd leaned in, silent, waiting. I'm launching Irwin Strategic Consulting next month, a boutique firm, selective clientele, focused on companies that value performance and people. David's smile softened into something genuine. A consulting firm. Of course. That's exactly what you do. Then, turning back to the audience, he added, and I assume you'll need anchor clients, companies with real budgets who trust your expertise? I met his gaze steadily. I'll be selective. I only partner with organizations that share my values, those that understand success is about more than the bottom line. Then Tech Vision would like to be your first client, David announced. $2 million initial contract, renewable annually. We need someone to overhaul our entire marketing strategy, and especially our corporate culture. The room gasped. Somewhere, a champagne glass shattered. Especially, David added pointedly, our HR and internal communications. Seems we have some toxic culture issues to fix. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Sandra's department would now be rebuilt by the sister she'd called unemployable. That's generous, I said evenly. But I have a few conditions. David chuckled. Of course you do. First, I work remotely. My mother needs me, and that's non-negotiable. Second, I choose my own team, no interference. And third, I want it in writing that family caregiving can never be used against an employee's performance or advancement. David grinned. Done, done, and done. He pulled out his phone. I'll have legal draft it tonight. The other executives were quick to follow. Morrison Industries, 3 million, same terms. Jacobson Tech, 2.5. Wellington Partners, 4 million. Within minutes, I'd secured over $12 million in verbal contracts. My phone was recording every detail, names, companies, amounts. From unemployed to an 8-figure business owner, in the middle of a wedding toast. Jake ran up and hugged me tightly. "Mom, this is incredible." "This is your day, sweetheart," I whispered. Emily joined, smiling through tears. "Are you kidding? Our wedding just became legendary. People will talk about this forever." And they would. The photographer was snapping every moment, the videographer capturing every word. Tomorrow, the business world would be buzzing about the woman who turned public humiliation into a multimillion-dollar launch. "One more thing," David said, raising a fresh glass of champagne. "A proper toast to Jake and Emily. May your marriage be as strong as your mother's courage." He turned to me. "And to Melanie Irwin, who reminds us that the greatest risk is playing it safe, and the greatest power is knowing what truly matters." 200 glasses lifted in unison. To Jake and Emily, to Melanie. As I sipped my champagne, I thought of my mother, watching through the live stream from her bed. She'd always told me real strength is quiet, steady, patient. She was right. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic, it's success. The rest of the evening unfolded around this new reality. Sandra's empty chair at the family table became a silent monument to consequences. The wedding coordinator, ever professional, had already removed her place setting as if she'd never been there. But everyone knew something seismic had shifted. By the time the cake was cut, Irwin Strategic Consulting had 3 signed contracts and $6 million in guaranteed revenue. David's assistant even arrived with official Tech Vision letterhead so everything could be formalized that night. A soft voice broke my thoughts. "Mrs. Irwin?" It was Jennifer Liu, the same young woman from earlier. "I'm so sorry for not speaking up when your sister started talking." "You didn't know," I said gently. "But we suspected," she admitted. "She's been toxic for months, writing people up for leaving early to pick up sick kids, denying bereavement leave, but taking time off for her dog's surgery." Another Tech Vision employee joined in. "She's cruel, Mrs. Irwin. It's been awful." David reappeared beside us. "That ends now. Part of your contract will be helping us rebuild HR policy, from the ground up." I nodded. Family first can't just be a slogan. It has to be policy. "Speaking of family," Jake said, rushing over. "Grandma's on FaceTime." I took the phone, and my mother's smiling, tired face filled the screen. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "I've been watching. I'm so proud of you." "Mom, no tears," she interrupted. "You stood up for yourself without stepping on anyone. That's the daughter I raised." All around us, music swelled, laughter returned, and life moved on. But for me, everything had changed. Business cards piled on the table. LinkedIn messages exploded. By midnight, Irwin Strategic was trending across business circles. David leaned close. "Sandra will probably try to spin this. Claim wrongful termination." "Let her," I said calmly. There were 200 witnesses, and cameras. She'd written herself out of my story. I was done giving her lines. Later that night, while guests danced and toasted, I sat at the head table signing contracts between wedding speeches. Emily's father, a corporate lawyer, customized agreements in real time on his tablet. "I'll need 3 client references," I told David. He laughed. "You're negotiating against yourself, we came to you." "Standards don't change with circumstances," I replied. He admired that, and immediately provided 3 glowing references. "One last thing," I added. "I work Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. Evenings by appointment only, weekends reserved for my mother." "That's only 30 hours a week," someone noted. "And I'll accomplish more in those 30 hours than most do in 60, I said. Quality over quantity. David signed without hesitation. Honestly, your terms should be the industry standard. Morrison Industries and Jacobson Tech followed, each contract reflecting my non-negotiables: remote work, flexibility, autonomy, and written protection for family caregivers. Emily's father shook his head, impressed. You're rewriting corporate consulting as we speak. No, I corrected gently. I'm just restoring balance. It's long overdue. As Jake and Emily danced to At Last, I realized how many moments I'd once traded away for boardrooms and deadlines. Never again. David appeared once more. About Sandra's old position, we'll need a replacement immediately. Any recommendations? I thought of Jennifer Liu and the others who'd shown integrity that night. Promote from within, I said. Start with the people she overlooked. He smiled. Consider it done. When I finally stepped outside, the cool October air wrapped around me. My phone buzzed, 17 missed calls from Sandra. I deleted them without a second thought. Tomorrow, I'd file my LLC paperwork. By Monday, I'd be her former company's highest-paid consultant. Sometimes, revenge doesn't need noise or fire. Sometimes, it looks like peace, and a wildly successful business. 3 major business journals reached out, requesting interviews. Forbes even wanted to feature me in a piece about the rise of compassionate consulting. News of Sandra's firing spread quickly too. TechVision released an official statement about their restructuring, emphasizing a renewed commitment to aligning with core values. Jennifer Liu had been promoted to interim HR director, tasked with rebuilding the department from the ground up. First order of business, she told me during our first call, is implementing your family-first policies, unlimited caregiving leave, flexible hours for parents, and real mental health support. Everything Sandra shut down. Later that day, Jake called during his lunch break. Mom, you've gone viral at work, he laughed. Everyone's talking about what happened Saturday night. Oh, and 3 more companies called asking for your contact info. I'm fully booked for the next year, I told him with a smile. But I'll keep a waiting list. That afternoon, while Mom napped, I began drafting my first strategic report for TechVision. It didn't hold back. Their corporate culture was toxic, their messaging hypocritical, and their employee retention a disaster. Sandra hadn't caused the problem, she was just one symptom of it. This will take at least 18 months to fix, I told David over our video call. He nodded solemnly. Whatever it takes. Saturday night was a wake-up call. If we had leaders like Sandra, we clearly lost sight of what mattered. By Friday, Irwin Strategic had 6 employees, all remote, all parents or caregivers, all highly skilled professionals who had been pushed out of traditional corporate settings. We met virtually during school hours, produced exceptional work, and still made it to soccer games and doctor appointments. The first month's revenue exceeded what I used to make in an entire year. But more importantly, I hadn't missed a single moment with Mom. I was there for her on her hard days and her good ones, through her confusion, her calm, her fear, and her peace. You know, my assistant said during our Friday check-in, Sandra applied to work here. I know, I replied. I forwarded her resume to a competitor. Everyone deserves a second chance, just not from me. Professional boundaries. The one lesson Sandra never learned. 3 months later, I was sitting beside Mom's hospice bed, my laptop open, leading a virtual board meeting for Morrison Industries. She was having a good day, awake, alert, smiling faintly as she listened to my business voice. Our third quarter projections exceeded expectations by 40%, I reported, sharing my screen. The campaign worked because it was authentic, your employees' real stories, not corporate fluff. Melanie, this is incredible, the CEO said. How did you find these stories? I listened, I replied. Something my sister never learned to do. When the meeting ended, I held Mom's hand as she dozed. The hospice nurse, funded entirely by my new income, adjusted her medications gently. Every dollar I earned meant better care, more comfort, more peace for her final chapter. Then my phone buzzed, an email from Sandra. Melanie, I know you won't respond, but I need to say this. I was wrong, jealous, insecure, and cruel. Losing everything showed me what you already knew: success without family is just emptiness with a title. I'm working at a small firm now, entry level, starting over. Your referral got me the interview. Thank you for giving me grace I didn't deserve. Mom would be proud of you. You chose love. Sandra, I didn't reply. But I didn't delete it either. Forgiveness would come someday. Trust, never again. That evening, Jake and Emily visited, bringing wedding photos. Every shot captured the exact moment everything shifted: Sandra's shock, David's revelation, my quiet triumph. Jake studied one of the photos. Any regrets? None, I said. I have my own company, my own terms, and I haven't missed a single day with Grandma. Your aunt gave me a gift. Really, her cruelty pushed me to stop playing small. 2 weeks later, Mom passed peacefully, holding my hand. I was there because I could be, because I chose to be. No job, no deal, no amount of money could ever replace that. At her funeral, Sandra sat in the back row. We made eye contact once. I nodded, acknowledgement, not forgiveness. She had lost her right to grieve with family when she tried to destroy it. But life moved forward. Mom's bills were paid. Jake's student loans cleared. Emily's parents' struggling business got a silent investor. Success wasn't just revenge, it was how I honored Mom's sacrifices, even for the daughter who'd lost her way. 1 year after the wedding, Irwin Strategic Consulting occupied 3 floors of a Manhattan building, though I rarely stepped inside. My 42-person remote team ran operations while I worked from my home office, overlooking the garden Mom never got to see me plant. The firm was valued at $30 million, with a 2-year client waiting list. Harvard Business School even made us a case study on values-based consulting. But the real wins were quieter. Jennifer Liu calling to share that employee satisfaction at TechVision had jumped 60%. 3 single mothers on my team who could now afford proper childcare and flexible schedules. And Jake telling me, Mom, I'm proud to share your last name. Then my COO said during a Monday video call, we've got a situation. Sandra Morrison's been promoted to VP at her new company. They want to hire us. I leaned back, thinking. Sandra had rebuilt herself through genuine effort. No shortcuts. No manipulation. She'd even started a small blog about redemption and second chances, mentioning only the sister who taught me my greatest lesson. Take the meeting, I said. But I won't lead the account. The meeting went well. I watched the recording later. Sandra was professional, composed, humble. Asked about her experience with corporate culture, she answered simply, I learned the hard way that toxic leadership destroys more than just careers, it destroys families. We took the account. Not for Sandra, but for the employees who deserved better. Ironically, Sandra became the biggest supporter of our family-first policies. Growth is strange like that. 6 months later, at Jake and Emily's pregnancy announcement dinner, Sandra wasn't there. She sent a gift and a note, congratulations. I'm respecting the boundaries I should have honored from the beginning. Love always, S. Jake noticed me looking at the card. Do you miss her? I miss who she could have been, I said softly. But I don't miss who she was. That night, I drafted an email I'd never send. Sandra, your attempt to humiliate me gave me the courage to stop playing by rules that were never made for women like us, women who choose family without apology. You thought you were exposing my weakness. Instead, you revealed my strength. Every insult became inspiration. I have everything now, the freedom, the career, and the moments that matter. Success isn't the best revenge. Living authentically is. And thanks to you, I finally am. I deleted it, but kept the lesson. Some bridges are meant to burn, they light the path forward. Tomorrow, I'd review 6 new proposals, have lunch with Jake, and visit Mom's grave with fresh flowers. I'd keep living the life Sandra once mocked, and thriving in it. Because the best way to respond when someone calls you a failure is to succeed so brilliantly that they become a footnote in your story. And Sandra? She wasn't even a sentence, just a comma. Now, that's my story of how my sister's attempt to humiliate me turned into the biggest opportunity of my life. If you've stayed with me till the end, thank you. Subscribe and hit the bell. Have you ever had a family member underestimate you? Share your story in the comments. And if you'd like to hear about the time Sandra tried to steal my biggest client and ended up blacklisted from the entire industry, that's another story for another day. Remember, your worth isn't defined by your job title, but by how you choose to show up when it matters most. See you in the next story.